Hey everybody, it's Jim Bailey here from MalleTAK. Glad to have you guys with us. We are here for another installment of MalleTALK, where we have interesting discussion with industry leaders. And we're joined here today by two of my favorite people. Both have a really storied background in percussion, and both kind of come at things from a little bit of a different angle. So I think it's going to be really fun tonight, as opposed to just interviewing one artist or one composer or one musician, is to have a little bit of a dialogue back and forth between different perspectives of these two individuals. So without further ado, I want to bring on Andrea Venet. Andrea, hello. How you doing?
Hello.
Glad to have you on here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we also have no stranger to this podcast or really any social event that we have, Tony Miceli. Hey, Tony.
Hey, everybody. What's happening?
Thanks for having us on.
MalleTALK. I just got that.
MalleTALK, yeah.
MalleTALK.
You know, interesting discussions.
Oh, I love it. I love that.
MalleTALK, yeah. So first and foremost, wrapping up the end of the school year, kind of an end of maybe another bit of a strange year, historically speaking. How you guys holding up? How's the end of the season looking, the beginning of the summer? Talk to me a little bit about what you guys got planned.
Okay. Should I go first? You want to go first?
Yeah, hit it.
Tony, hit it.
I'm glad the year is over. I think of it like we made it through. I think a lot of students wasted a year. You know, I just know from students, because I would talk to them, how they cheated on tests, how they did this, how they did that. So I think this year gets kind of written off. A lot of my students didn't play in ensembles, or the ensembles were online. But, you know, a lot of my guys worked hard for the most part, and we made it through. And hopefully next year, everybody's, on steroids and just going nuts. I hope the young people party their butts off and practice their butts off, because they deserve it after doing what they did for this year. And the last thing I'll say is, I hope we've learned about what things can be online and what things can't. And we can save a lot of space in the schools by putting on music history and these other courses that we do not need to take up space with. That's my thing.
Andrea.
Well, I think it was a crazy year. I think overall, I'm really proud of what we were able to accomplish. And I know, like, depending on where you're at, like, the circumstances were so different for different schools and what you're able to do. I was teaching in person the whole year. Fall semester was kind of like, what is this? We're figuring it out. Luckily, all my students chose to be in person. They gave us the choice to teach and do that. So luckily, they were all there. I had a lot of new students, so we were feeling things out. Spring semester felt a lot more normal. And, we had some large ensembles in person, kind of split up and downsized. But I mean, I'm really, really lucky, because percussion ensemble was pretty normal, I suppose. We just had to do things in small numbers, like room limits and stuff. But I think, despite everything, in a lot of ways, I think it was one of the most productive semesters I've had with my students since being at UNF, just because they had less distractions and had a lot, they had nothing to do but practice.
So you always have these answers that just flip me out. So
we didn't have a spring break, and I'm telling you, week 10 came, and all the professors and the students, they're all glazed over. I mean, I taught a methods class, and at one point I came in, there was half the class was gone because they're just kind of getting burned out, or maybe they had to quarantine because of some whatever. But I mean, ultimately there was no major outbreaks. There was no serious issues at all. And my students, I think the second semester around, they really, after we got through the fall, they were ready to go in the spring and kind of all right, let's do this. And so I felt more like myself, and it was a little bit more, intense in a good way, I guess. So, I mean, it was nuts, but we did the best we could, and it was so much better than limping through last spring when everything got put online and kind of canceled. That was teaching lessons on books, timpani lessons on books, it was, I don't know. So I'm happy my institution let us do that, and I think it was as good as it could have been. So
yeah, I think there's some things, there's obvious truths in kind of both perspectives of hey, it was kind of a throwaway year in some degrees. There's an opportunity in some degrees. I think there's a lot of truths in that. The one thing for me that I've observed is the world feels a little bit smaller now. You know, we all have been thrust onto having to learn Zoom or other kind of like distance learning platforms or podcast. We had to like, you know, relegate our performances to podcasts or things like that, online events like World Vibe Congress or like this podcast here. And I think it allows us to connect with people in a way and feel comfortable doing it in a way that didn't, you know, we were just trying to figure out, is my volume on? Is my microphone working? We've kind of all got past that. So I think that there's some good things that are going to come out of this. And I hope, I forget who I was talking to, people that are musicians, not necessarily within the percussion realm, but the creative juices were flowing in a way that they hadn't been because people are sequestered to, you know, their cabins out in the mountains or something. And I'm just kind of waiting for the tsunami of like creativity, music and paintings and movies and culture that will come out of this like world event that wouldn't have been otherwise possible because of it. So I guess you got to take the good with the bad a little bit.
Yeah.
One good important thing to note, after the last pandemic came the Roaring 20s.
Yeah.
So, knock on wood. I hope this just becomes one big party for a few years, because that'll mean a lot of gigs, a lot of stuff to do. So,
Yeah.
So the Charleston's coming back. Is that what you're saying?
It just might be.
I mean, I am like, I kept saying like, it's, you know, to my colleagues and students, like PASIC 2021 is going to be a rager. Like, I can't wait. I can't wait to just be, you know, see live music and see people in person and, you know.
Yeah. So what was it like, Andrea? Like you guys had a percussion ensemble performance in with a live audience this year?
Yeah.
Like, what was the takeaway there for the kids? They must have come off stage going, oh my God, I forgot what that was like.
It was weird. It was definitely, and I gave a recital too, and it was just limited to like campus community. So not a lot of people, you know, in the audience, but definitely it was weird. It was like, wow, I'm like, even like I played at church like Sunday, and it was like, and I haven't played in front of a lot of live people. You know, I was more nervous than I usually get because it's just been so long. And I know some of my students had recitals and they were like, it's just been kind of weird because we just haven't played in front of people a lot lately. But I think it made it mean something. You know, it was kind of like, especially the second semester, we had a little bit more performances and you know, student degree recitals and stuff. And it was kind of like, I think there's just kind of this fire. You don't take anything for granted, you know, because you just never, I know a year ago in March, my duo partner Annie was at UNF and Escape 10 played with the percussion ensemble, and it was like the day before they canceled class. We were the last concert that happened on campus in the middle of March, and it's kind of like other schools had started to close and other things had started to be canceled, and like, you know, it was kind of this eerie sort of weird thing. It was like, you know, like it was the last thing that happened on campus, and then it was like over. And that was the last performance we had. So I kind of, the students that returned who were a part of that group, it's like, do you remember what we were doing last year? Like, you know, I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the background.
That's okay. Tony, I know you've done some like virtual stuff at Chris's. Have you done any like live, have you done like your first live post-COVID performance yet?
I have not played. Oh, I have. Yes, I did one. I did one at a club called South. But that's the first one. And now there's some other things coming up. And I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I took some work this summer in France and then Transylvania. Yes. Isn't that bizarre?
Dude, I can't. Awesome.
I want all the pictures.
Yeah, we're 4 hours away from Vlad's castle.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was that performance like for you?
It was cool. You know, we had the barriers up in front, plexiglass.
Yeah.
And it was a great band, so we had fun, and it was nice to see people out in the audience. And you know, I mean, I'm a serious introvert, but I like playing in front of people.
Yeah.
You know, I just, you know, when the set comes along, I just like to go off by myself somewhere. But it's nice to play the music for people. So it's coming. There's some things coming up. I think I got 2 more in the immediate future, 3 more that'll be in front of people. So hopefully it's going to start
Good.
coming around again.
Good. Well, I think we kind of very succinctly kind of wrapped up kind of our current mindset, what our last year of our lives have been. I'm right there with you guys. I had my first gig about a month ago to a kind of a virtual audience at Carmel Center for the Performing Arts, and I was imagining like people in front of me, like that's what we all crave. So I definitely get that. Typically what we do in these segments is kind of go back and just get a little bit of history, a little bit of perspective as to where you guys have came from. I think there's a lot of, out there what you're currently doing, but I'd love for us to learn a little bit more about kind of where you guys have come from, what your starts were like. So let's talk about your start in percussion. And Tony, you can go first this time. Andrea went first last time. Where's the humble beginnings for Tony Miceli?
I guess the beginnings are, I must have been 5 or 6, and I began playing guitar. So that was my first instrument, and I loved it because I was in my room by myself, so I practiced all the time. And then I went to drums, so I was taking drum lessons, and then I started taking piano lessons, and I got real serious with piano. Like I had a teacher, and I just about lived at his house.
Wow.
So it was really, really cool. And then a couple weird things happened. So I quit piano, and I just was playing vibes and classical guitar. At the same time, playing in a few different rock bands and a funk band and doing lots of drugs and all that. So when it was time to go to college, I did not want to go to college. And my dad insisted I go, and he found out that the school in Philadelphia, you had to be a percussionist. There was no drum set degree. When I went to school, you didn't major in drum set. Mm-hmm. And so he took me for a percussion lesson, and I kept telling him, I'm not going to college. I'm not going to do it. And I went for the lesson, and I remember the guy gave me sticks, and I hit a marimba, and I was like, oh my God, I have no idea why he did it to me, but in that split second, I thought, oh, I'm going to college. I want to play this. And then when I get to college, I switched over to vibes, which everybody knows is way hipper than the marimba. And sorry.
Let's have a hip battle, man.
You
will have time to respond. I feel like this is a debate.
No. We had a good talk about that once, about why her favorite instrument was marimba. But so I did, and all I did was vibes for 4 years, and I just practiced nonstop. And at the time, I'm not embarrassed to talk about this stuff, but I did meth every day so I could practice all day. So I practiced 8-10 hours a day. I was going to bed 3-4 in the morning, getting up early, and I did that for 3 years just because I loved playing the vibes. And
so
that's all I did.
Did you love the instrument and that's why you practiced, or did you practice because you had there was an end game in I'm going to be the next great? You just wanted to practice the instrument. You love the instrument.
There's never been an end game. If you look at my career, it's obvious. There's never been an end game. I just love playing the instrument. And my whole life, I've loved playing mallets. When I got on it, I never went back to the other instruments. I play piano for teaching and stuff, but I don't know. I stand over there and I play, and I think about where this stick was, and I'm doing this, and I hear the melody, and I just think there's nothing else I want to do.
Awesome.
And that's all I've done. So,
Andrea, how about you? Where did we get our start at, and what was your path?
Well, I started out as a violinist. I started violin in 4th grade, and then I started piano lessons in 6th grade, and was really, really into that. And I think very similar to Tony, I just got addicted to music. I used to ride horses a lot, so I was doing that. And then, let's see, my parents made me join a basketball team at the YMCA. It was co-ed, so girls and guys. I was terrible at basketball or any sports.
Did you get a couple good elbows in?
Oh God, it was awful. I had to do free throws and shoot from closer to the basket because I was so short. It was just awful. But so finally, I guess when we got into music, we found out what I really liked, and it was just an instant obsession. Just practicing because I just love playing. But then because I played piano, I got recruited to do marching band because they wanted to start a front ensemble and didn't have a pit. So they're like, well, you play piano, so you're going to play the xylophone. So I kind of self-taught myself the
Wow.
xylophone, and then we moved my sophomore year, and I joined like a big competitive marching band program that had like a full front ensemble, and my front ensemble percussion teachers were hardcore marimba geeks and had all done the Stevens seminar and were like, you know, like disciples of the method of movement. You know, they went, I think, in the 90s, you know, because the seminar's been going on
Yeah,
for
42 years.
30. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
we played 35th and 36th annual, and that was like, yeah. So, yeah. Oh, it makes me old. But, so they were hardcore. Like, my first marimba teacher has a MalleTAK marimba, and they kind of, I think, once that got introduced to me, then it was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I'm in love. So I did orchestra and band and drumline at the same time all 4 years of high school, and then in college I played both the first year, and then I completely switched to the dark side, just because, you know, percussion was more fun. People, or I don't know, it was more my thing, I suppose. So that's how that started.
Nice. Yeah. And you did a little time in drum corps, right?
I did, yeah. I marched Santa Clara Vanguard for 3 years from 2002 to 2004 in the front ensemble. And my teacher there was Jim Ancona, who was also a hardcore method of movement. I think back in the day, early 2000s, like he was like, our front ensemble's the only one playing like that. Like we did the method of movement. That was our technique program. He was another Lee Stevens, you know, summer camp kind of person. And I think that's really where I just had really good foundations. And that kind of, you know, so I kind of got, I guess, indoctrinated to like the, you know, the marimba and the technique, and just like people who are really marimba players and really had a
Yeah.
love for the instrument in that way. So
Yeah. I guess I didn't know the years you marched. You marched with one of my really good friends, Eric Rittenauer, tenor player.
oh yeah,
Yeah. Sweetheart of a guy.
yeah, yeah, small world.
Um, so how do you think, you guys are both educators now? You know, Andrew, you teach in the university. Tony, you teach a lot of lessons. You teach a lot online. You do a lot of camp work. Um, in a nutshell, and either of you can go first. How do you think like percussion education today, like the student experience today, is different than your student experience? Maybe I think Tony's signifying that Andrea goes first, wants to go first.
Well, shoot, I'm so much more aware now than I was. So it's hard because I think the biggest thing is social media. I think that's the biggest difference. I see young students coming up who are they're worried. One of the things that they have to worry about is making a name for themselves and getting themselves out there and having a brand and all this stuff. And I was not thinking about any of that when I was in college. I just wanted to practice. I wanted to be in the practice room practicing and not doing anything. Anything else that wasn't practicing was, you know, so I wasn't worried about getting the perfect Instagram post or making YouTube videos or,
Yeah.
you know, and so I think now I'm more aware, I guess. Even when I was a student the last time getting my DMA, the world has changed a lot. And so it's just trying to be aware of that and kind of prep them and have conversations and kind of think about the things that they need to start thinking about as they approach more education or getting onto the job market, and just kind of, you know, talking about resumes and CVs and, you know, getting recordings out there and stuff, which is kind of stuff that I don't feel like it was talked about a lot when I was young.
Yeah.
You know, like, what's a CV? I had no idea what that was in my undergrad. Like, and I never had to have one for
That's
anything
things
until
the truckers talk on, right?
what?
That's the thing the truckers talk on, right? CV. You know, I've been in speaking to a lot of young, like we'll say aspiring artists. You know, a lot of college students that are building their careers. You know, and they tend to focus, which is not uncommon in college, on all the things they don't have. You know, all the things, all the places they aren't yet, all the accomplishments they haven't achieved yet. And what I keep reinforcing to them is one of those points is like, yeah, you've got obviously things you've got to do, but you have to be more aware of who you are, because you've grown up in the social media age and you understand the tools of communication better than the prior generations did, because those things were either done for them or they weren't available to them. You know, you understand audience and how to build an audience, how to engage them, and what the metrics are. And all these things that you can do to kind of help set a path for your career, to give yourself a brand and give yourself a voice. And I think that's another one of those things that, with all the things bad about social media, there's some good in there, because you have to do a little soul searching sometimes to figure out who you are and what your value is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, Tony, how about you? Things, different today than from when you were growing up?
Well, I think it's the computers and it's social media. And I got a computer in like 1982. I got a Mac 512K, and I just fell in love with computers at that point. And I've done stuff with them my whole life. So, but the social media thing, I think back 12 years ago. My dad is the one who gave me some direction because I just was playing around Philadelphia. But the gig started drying up after 9/11, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to start like a vibe school and something." And then he wrote me an amazing check to get all the equipment, everything I need to air condition my basement, to do all this stuff, to set it up. And once I started putting things on YouTube, which would have never happened when I was younger. Once I started putting things up there, I started making all these friends, and then people started, asking me to, will you come here? Will you do this? So if it wasn't for social media and doing it, I would probably just be playing around town now. Or with COVID and everything, I'd probably be working in a McDonald's or something, because the way things are. So that changed everything for me, and it was really fun. And I got to use tech and record and do stuff online, and then play live and go play live. And then I started going away to all these places, and I was like, oh wow. So I have my dad once again to thank. He did a few things for me that kind of helped me to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly kind of supported, enabled you in a good way to do that stuff. But you have a kind of an innate craving to foster community, and that's really what the Vibes Workshop seems to be. This kind of just seems to be who you are as a person. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that. What the Vibes Workshop is, what your mission is with that, and kind of what are some of the things that might potentially be in the future for you.
Well, I guess, I saw two things in Percussion magazine, and because I loved, when I got out of school, I loved the vibraphone. I mean, I just loved it. You can't explain it. I guess Andrea knows with maybe the marimba or whatever she loves about percussion. And Jim, you play drums,
Mm-hmm.
but I was just loved it. And then I read an article, and somebody said something about the Vibes, and Gary Burton said, "Oh, the Vibes will be dead in 50 years. Nobody cares about the Vibes." And then I read a couple years later, then David Friedman, somebody said, Gary Burton says the Vibes will be dead in 50 years. And then in another magazine article, David says, "What do you mean 50 years? It's dead now." And I was so angry that I just went on this crusade. I just kept thinking about, why does it have to die? So I kept, just, that was always in my head, and I was looking for ways to do things. And in the early days, there wasn't really a lot of ways to do things.
Mm-hmm.
But once social media came along, and YouTube and all that, I had a way to do it. And my goal is, it's a fun goal. It's but I always tell Lee, my goal is to make the vibraphone more popular than the marimba. That is my absolute goal. It's just a fun goal. People have gotten mad I say that. It's just like, oh, give me a break. And I've had arguments with Lee why the Vibes are hipper than the marimba, and we go back and forth.
That's a
So
separate
it's just,
episode.
I think it's certainly like it's more accessible to different audiences. So I think in that way it is probably way more popular, because it's more of a mainstream music with jazz, especially. Like it's not
but
such a classical
not with
niche
percussionists.
instrument. Yeah,
Not with
but
percussionists.
outside of the percussion world, though,
Right.
you
'Cause
got to speak.
every school I go to, there's a vibraphone in the corner, and it's beat to you know what. The pedal doesn't work. I did a concert at Bloomberg. It's the school in Pennsylvania, and they pulled out a vibraphone, and I just tapped a bar where I was talking to the guy, and it rang. And I was like, my foot's not on the pedal. How is it ringing? There was no damper. And the guy went and got these felt pads that he said he put underneath them. I said, what? And he put felt pads, and they kept falling off, and I had to pick them back up and put them on. And the guy said to me, he said, Well, it was good enough for Stefan Harris. I said, no, 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 no. Stefan Harris got a big check from you, and he stayed and played and took the money and ran. I said, that's the thing. I wasn't getting a lot of money, but for me, it was a lot. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, it's just my mission, and I love hanging with vibe players. I love we meet, a few times a month. We have a coffee house on Sundays. I just I like hanging with amateur and professional vibe players and just talking about stuff.
Yeah, it's clear. I mean, the thing that you guys had together after the World Vibe Congress, I thought was like, that snapshot of everybody on that Zoom hang after the party, or after the event was like, it was a "We Are the World" kind of a picture. I mean, David was on there, Mike Balter was on there, you were on there, Lee was. It was incredible. So definitely a testament to your effort and your goal. And you have a new idea percolating. Let's hear about that.
Oh, so my new idea, this is a really good idea. I want to get a list of all the Omega players. All the Omega vibraphone players. I want to get your email addresses. Yes, you. and then I want to have some meetings, once a month, once every other month, and we just all get together. And I don't know what we talk about or what we do, but we find things to talk about, and then we find things to do. Just like the Vibe Coffee House, because I know now that there's a lot of Omega players out there. There's quite a few, and I know there's a whole bunch of upcoming Omega owners. So I want to get all their information, and then we could put out a newsletter once a month. And if somebody makes a CD or makes a video, we can just pass it around. All that stuff I think is goodwill, good natured, and I think it'll help. It just helps the whole community, and yeah, it's
Helps your
exciting.
crusade.
I think people want to feel included and feel a part of something. So I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And people love to, they love to identify with, their instrument,
Yes.
So that's kind of and the cool thing is there's a little bit of individuality in that too, because you can, you could customize your color. Tony, you're rocking purple this time of year, and Andrea, of course, we got the Green Ranger.
Yep.
Yeah.
So speaking of Green Ranger, a little bit of a shift of topics. Andrea, so did a little sleuthing on you this week, non creepy sleuthing, and checked out some of the. You've got a nice catalog of music. One of the pieces is called Green Ranger. Can you talk a little bit about? And this will kind of dovetail into, which I think is a cool little dichotomy between the two of you, is composition versus improvisation. For you, Andrea, can you talk a little bit about kind of your approach as a composer, your voice, if you feel like you have a voice? Is it I kind of achieve the mission that's set in front of me, or I like to put my my thumbprint on the music to be kind of who I am? Do you have an approach? Are you still working that out? Like what's your talk to me a little bit about what your general thing is when you approach a piece of music or a new composition?
Well, I definitely, the more things that I've been writing, the more I see my unique personality through that, and even one of my students like played a duo I wrote, and he's like, I'm seeing parallels between other stuff I've written and like how the marimba part works. And it's like, oh, that's cool. Like, so I guess the more output I can sort of see my thumbprint, not on purpose through everything. I will say, like, I've done arranging for a long time, but I really seriously started kind of leaning into the composing just like a couple years ago, like 2018 over the summer. I had like an epiphany and decided it's something I wanted to really experiment with and try, since a lot of percussion composer performers are doing it. It's like, well, why can't I do it? I'm not a student anymore, and kind of getting out of that mindset. So, I mean, so really, I think I do a lot of writing just because I get an idea, but I've been doing a lot of commissions lately too. I just finished a commission for Third Coast for a drum quartet for them. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And they're awesome. I mean, I really, really respect. So it's very, very humbling. It's like, I was like really excited. And then a couple of groups are playing at PASIC. And so what I'm starting to do is like, I get ideas. Usually it's either a motive, like a rhythmic motive, or a melodic thing that I really like. And it's usually when I'm improvising and messing around, or just like, honestly, a lot of my ideas come from me talking to the dog at home, just kind of a neutral headspace, where you're not trying to come up with something. My best
Mhm.
ideas have been when you're kind of in that headspace where I can't come up with I don't know, just like spontaneous. And it's
Yeah.
usually when I'm just like jamming at home. So I try to catalog now these ideas. So then if I get a commission, I can fall back on that. And so that's usually, if I get a motive, it's kind of like, can I think about how I want it to be orchestrated? And what are the sounds that I hear and how does that want to be realized? But then if it's something more specific, sometimes it's easier, like, hey, we need a piece that is for this instrumentation.
Right.
So I just try to keep track and catalog. My voice memo is totally full on my phone, so I get ideas and like, well, this will work better as a marimba solo. And I do a lot of improvising too. I really like that. I got into, I actually took jazz vibe lessons and really got into playing vibraphone. It's kind of like my songwriting instrument. Like it's something where I can, you know, it's, I don't know, you're just kind of improvising that way as opposed to playing the classical written composed pieces in a very
Hmm.
academic way. So that's where I started getting into that. And so ultimately everything I write starts as an improvisation
Yeah.
on my own. So
I found the voice memo thing is when I used to do a lot of arranging, the voice memo thing was always dangerous because I'd set my phone next to my bed and I'd try desperately to fall asleep. But if I'm like writing before I go to
yeah,
sleep, you've got to get in this mindset of just this music like flowing through you.
yeah,
And then you try to go to sleep, which never works out. And then right when you get to sleep, that idea pops in
yep.
your head. You get, it's like, so I tried, I had to avoid doing that because I already have enough sleep problems.
Well, it's
You
funny you mentioned like Green Ranger. I was
know?
literally dead asleep middle of the night, and I woke up, and I thought of ba, 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 like the opening lick, like
Yeah.
it that came to me in the middle of the night, and I had to wake up and quietly like sing it to my phone without waking up my husband, and once that just came to me, and once I sat down and started writing it, it just quickly wrote itself, and I just knew I wanted an energetic piece for vibraphone and percussion quartet because not a lot
Mhm.
of those pieces exist.
Right.
But that was like, your brain gets into a deep work state. It's kind of like when it's,
Yep.
at rest. Actually, there's a really great book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's got a yellow
Mm.
cover. That book really had a huge impact on me because it just talks about when you eliminate distractions. And
Yeah.
some people, have to get really, and that's how I feel. Like, it's like I can be hours in and then I get more and more momentum, like 4 hours in practicing or writing. And I kind of getting like, it's kind of like I'll do it until it's done. I'll
Right.
not sleep for 4 days. And then once that piece is written, then I can sleep. Like it's out of my head.
Right.
But that book's really good. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, eliminating distractions is great. My favorite is there's a game called Inner Game of Tennis,
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
which is more analogous to like performance, and it talks about like the lesson about the devil and the angel, and one's helpful, one's harmful. They're both kind of bad in the moment, right? They're both taking occupying concentration space when you could be,
Yeah.
dealing with the ball coming at you. So Tony, for you, how much of that of like Andrew's approach to how she composes is related or not related to how you compose, in the moment when you're improvising?
well, first thing, inner game of tennis and was a requirement for my improv class for about 15 years. So we read that book
Interesting.
every year, and then I read Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance,
Yep,
and
that's another good one.
went off on all that stuff. But
Yeah.
I guess I think what the difference um, is that what if you improvise, you're doing it right now. And if you're composing, then you can take 10 years like Beethoven did to write what I think is the best symphony ever written, which is his Fifth Symphony. And, so you can really work the stuff out. So there's these kind of, to me, there's these pros and cons of both sides. And I think when you improvise, you sort of want it to head in that direction of it sounds like it's composed. Doesn't always happen, but you want some things. You want the band to be cohesive. You want everything to pull together, um, as if it's like that. And if it's a great band, everybody can find their parts and play their parts. So we can do a version. I always think we do a version of a composition,
Mm-hmm.
and but when I listen, not like I know a ton about classical music, um, but when I listen to a symphony or listen to the Brahms piano stuff or Rachmaninoff, the da 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 da, that's that symphony. you just go, oh my God, that's it. Like, improvising sucks. That's where it's at. And then you'll play a gig, or I listen to a great improviser and I see them make something like in the moment, and I go, that's it.
Yeah.
Composing sucks. So I go back and forth between the two. Um, but like Andrea, and like you're saying, we all have music in our head constantly, and I have nonstop music in my head. If I'm talking, okay, as soon as I stop, there's
Mm-hmm.
stuff in my head. I'm playing a
Hmm.
solo or something. I'm figuring something out, and that's probably uh, has something to do with just a couple of my divorces, because not listening, and just sitting there while somebody's telling you something, and you're like going, okay, yeah, and you're going, and I'm figuring stuff out. I'm thinking, I want to get on the piano. So
This next one's
uh,
called Yes, Dear.
yeah, yeah. Well, I failed.
Well,
Uh,
it's interesting you mentioned that, like, back to my college days. My I took a few years of jazz band when I was in school, and the jazz professor at the time would always say, basically, improvisation is composition without an eraser. you know so there has to be a level of planning and understanding. What you're
Yeah.
putting together behind the instrument is still thought out words and phrases and things that you've spent lots and lots of time on, lots of time on 2/7 chords and lots of times in certain changes and playing certain licks, so that in the moment you can do those things. Is there how much truth is there to that?
well, there's yes, you have to know what you're doing. Um, and I see people who are playing all kinds of stuff, and you just think, okay, you don't have a clue. You don't have a clue, or you have all these holes in your playing. But what you have to have, which the composer has to have, and the improviser has to have, is you have to have a method of translating what's in here to
Yeah.
come out here, and that's the ears. And if you don't develop your ears to a decent level, then you're not going to get what's in here to come out. And I hear, you hear somebody's composition, or I hear one of my compositions. I write a composition and the band plays it, and I just go, no, that's wrong. Like, that note is not the note. Like, that's so stupid of me. And, or that's not the chord.
Hmm.
Or, I would play with some great musicians, and they play my tune, and they would go, you don't want that, you want this. And I'd be like, that's what I wanted. So I think you have to develop your ears so you can hear
Yeah.
what you want, and then you can either put it on paper or in the computer, or you can stand up in front of people and deliver a message, because we're both trying to deliver something to people. I
I
mean,
think like a lot of people, think that improvisation or really good improvisers is just divine intervention, divine
oh,
inspiration. They just, and it's so not that. It's you build up a vocabulary and you're working within parameters, and like the best improvisers reuse material, and like when you listen to Joe play, when you listen to Tony play, you listen to Stefan play, like they all have their own style and their own licks, and it's like there's parameters there. The key is like you're able to, exactly what you want to play. Like you could sing, like when you sing, that's an immediate, like I'm making a decision and this is what I want it to sound like. And it's transferring it
yeah.
through your hands or your fingers, and not just like, all right, just play any note in a blues scale where you're just swinging at targets, like where you have to have meaningful, you have to know exactly what you want to play and be able to audiate that, and then you have to get good at rendering that through whatever instrument that you're
Yeah.
playing, as opposed to just play any note you want in an F
I,
major scale. That's not meaningful improvisation. That's not transferring something from here outward.
right. I heard a great mallet player, just gonna leave it at that, do an interview and talked about improvisation. And he said, and a couple of my students heard it, and I was like, ah. And he said, well, it just passes through me. And I said, bullshit. That's a load of crap. It doesn't pass through you. When my sister comes down on the vibes, picks up the sticks, and starts playing all kinds of incredible stuff, then I know it passes through you. But meanwhile, that person and the rest of us, and Andrea and you on the drums, I mean, spent thousands and thousands of hours to make it seem effortless.
Yeah.
And that's the point of this all. And that's the point I think we want to get across to our students, that if you choose to be great at this, it's going to take thousands of hours and a sacrifices in your life to become, a Warren Wolf or a Joe Locke. I mean, Warren Wolf tells a story of
Mm-hmm.
having to play his dad making him practice every day, and he hated it every single day, an hour and a half. Here's this little kid having to play for that long. He was miserable. And now he's just the top vibe player on the planet, and there's nobody like him.
Yeah.
So, and I think too many people would just think like it just passed through him. And
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
of those guys will say now, I don't practice. And and I think, no, you don't practice, but you play all day long.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
The cool thing is no matter if you're coming at it with, from the compositional side where you can sit down and make intentional decisions and take those decisions back if you choose to do something a little different, or you're in the moment when, you can't take anything back, to sit I don't do a lot of composition, and I am definitely not an improviser, but to sit in the audience and to experience the decisions that are being made and the intention behind them in a symphony or a percussion ensemble piece, or to sit in the room and feel somebody make a moment that in a moment's time is going to go poof and it'll never be the same, I think is amazing. And I sometimes, again, while I'm not improvisation was never really my thing, I've always appreciated and almost like yearned to like experience for a moment what would it be like to be in that moment and to have so much control over my instrument and my vocabulary and my intentions and my emotions to be able to channel that into the entire room and affect people like that. I just felt I've seen a lot of great stuff in my time in New York, and I wish I had that ability, I guess.
Wait, what was I gonna? You said, "Come on, Tone." It's
Should we go to
going
the
away.
instrument we play?
It's gone. It is gone.
It passed through you, right?
It was in the moment, right? We were in the moment.
Through me. Well, I know what it was. Well, whether it's a composition or whether it's an improvisation, I think, like if you listen to a great piece of music, no matter what it is, like you follow this melody, and it kind of either goes to where you want or surprises you, and that's a great piece of music. If you're like, what, like, sometimes I listen to something and think, what, why would you do? But other times you listen to things and you follow this ebb and flow, and it's magical, and it's a soundtrack, and it triggers all your emotions, and it brings up your past. I had the blinking light thing in therapy. What's that called? Not EMDR. Is that what it's called? Electromagnetic. And music does the same thing, because when you do this thing with the lights, your subconscious comes up, and you start bringing up stuff from when you're like things you forgot your whole life. And when I listen to music, sometimes it'll just bring something up, and it's like, oh my God, like I haven't thought about that in 40 years. So, and I think that's when it's done right. You trigger people's emotions. If Andrea writes a great piece of music, people in the audience are moved in some way and are emotional about it, about things and their lives and other things when they're done. And I think when somebody improvises really well, that they get done, and you're just like, oh, you might be a little bit exhausted as well, because you really follow this and you can keep their attention. I notice if I don't think I'm playing great, sometimes I look at the audience and everybody's like, if it's a club, everybody's got their phone out or they're doing something. I just think, I'm a loser. Like it's not gonna happen tonight. But some nights when things are great, everybody's paying attention to you.
Yeah. Well, that's why, like, I might have mentioned this in the last podcast. I get people that aren't musicians that apologize all the time, or they take an apologetic tone of, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how to play an instrument." And I'm like, "No, man, don't be sorry. Like, there's got to be the person on the other side of the stage. Like, why do you think we do this?"
Yeah.
Because if that was the case, Andrea, you could be composing in your office right now and playing it back through Sibelius or whatever, and that's it. That's the end game. And no, it's about something much bigger than that. It's about taking this thing that we've spent our lives learning how to do in this language, and making this language affect people that don't understand it in a way that kind of, you know, circumvents all the musical theory and the rules to
Oh
go,
yeah.
you know, this is just, it's humans. It's like my daughter. I was amazed. My daughter was, I think, 2.5 years old, and she had this like little plastic flower thing where if you push the different flower heads, they made different music, you know. So one was like she'll be coming around the mountain, and she would get into like a little two-step kind of thing. And then she pushed one, and there was a little melody in three. Da, 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 da. And as soon as she heard it, she went to like a different, very flowing motion. And I'm like, as a music teacher, I was looking at her like, that's like nature. That's not learned. Like, we didn't talk about how to
Yeah.
feel something in three. We didn't talk about a two. That's
You're
like,
right. It's nature.
it's like, it was incredible. So that's there for us to enjoy, you know. And there's got to be people on the other side of the stage to do that.
I have three things to say about that. Number one,
Please.
little kids, like the way most of our education system is you learn how to read music. Like a half
Yeah.
note is this, and that's 4 beats, and a quarter note is 1 beat. And then it's like a lot of, especially percussionists, are really intimidated by mallet reading and stuff, because it's like learning how to, you learn how to speak before you learn how to read. And
Yeah.
music should be the same. And that is proven when you watch what little kids who are 2 or 3, what they can accomplish, what they can copy, what they can generate, you know, without the complication of having to read and interpret a language. You know, it's like they're highly capable of doing things that are, you know, at a high level musically. Number two, I think you do not have to convince people of good music. You know, and I think I can think of plenty of examples of you know, people in the audience who are not like classically educated, who will enjoy something like music by Alejandro Vignal, which is crazy, complex, rhythmically intricate music. And like, you'd be surprised, like time and time again, you know, especially if it's executed in a way that's true to the way it was intended. You know, you'd be really surprised at who in the audience, what certain pieces speak to them, you know. And I think that's really good music. I think that's generally accepted in the percussion community. And be surprised at people like my mom, who are not a musician at all, be like, oh, that was my favorite piece. You know, and it's like, wow,
Yeah.
you know, you never, it's, you don't have to convince people of good music. And I think
They
also,
might
yeah,
not know. They might not know why, but they know what.
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
What's three?
3, I think it's just, you never know who you have in the audience. And I think that's like something that I try to like tell my students and stuff, you know, like whether you're doing a gig and you're playing music that maybe it's not your favorite, or you don't think things are great, or maybe you're not feeling at your best or whatever, you just never know. Could be just one person in the audience where music is such a unique way of communicating to people that it might, you know, make the difference on their day, you know. And it's kind of surprising when you know, you just never realize. So it's like, no matter what, you've got to always, you know, not take it for granted, because you never know how it's going to communicate to
Yeah,
somebody.
and who you can affect. I mean, I remember back in my drum corps days, we'd all huddle up before we go in the tunnel and take the field. And my life story was really about chasing my dream to march the Cavaliers, which I eventually ended up doing. But it was like every day. That was like, it was a relentless pursuit from the time I was 13 to the time I was 19, just to make this drum corps every single day. And my light bulb moment that I wanted to be there was DCM finals in the middle of a bunch of cornfields in DeKalb, Illinois. And that drum corps that night affected this kid enough to set him on a lifelong mission to achieve more than I ever thought I would, you know, and be a part of that corps in more ways than I ever thought I would. And so whenever we were in that huddle, I reminded my guys in the group, hey, think about that moment that this affected you, you know, that you made that decision in that moment. It could be in the middle of, you know, Grimes, Iowa on a Tuesday, or it could be at some church gig. It could be somewhere, but you have the ability to affect people so deeply. And that's the cool thing and the mystery about this, is you don't know when and you don't know where. And sometimes you may never, you know.
Well, and that's a good thing you said, because I think people need targets, and young people and students, they need targets. And you know, I never wanted something to fall back on. because I thought then I'd have something to fall back on. And, and so I think nowadays everybody's going after something and then they have something to fall back on, and times get rough, they fall back and then it's over,
Yeah.
But I think if somebody, when I see a student that's on a mission, I think, man, if everybody could have a mission, then we'd have less fallback things, and we'd have people just giving their all for something, and then achieving it. And if that was their thing and it's done, it's done. But I think it's something so important about life-changing moments, like you realizing what you want to do with the drum corps, or Andrea playing, percussion, or me getting on a mallet instrument. And there's this thing, and that thing eventually straightened things out for me, because I would have been horrible without music. I would have been much worse than I was, and I was pretty bad. But I would have been. I'm sure I would have been in jail. I mean, it wouldn't have happened. And the stuff that was going on around me, it was just crazy. I was lucky. My mother was a cop, so when I did get in trouble, I got off easy back in the day, because all the cops were my uncles. But I would have kept going and escalating. And the thing about music is it took me back and just kept me in the house and kept me practicing and wanting to play, because it takes, when you're playing your instrument, as you guys all remember, you're playing it, and you know how far you have to go. And either you're going to spend all your time getting there because it's going to take that much work, or you're just going to be mediocre. And I just thought, I have to at least try. I might be mediocre now. Like, you never know that, as I think I never know that. But I just thought, I have to spend my life trying to not be mediocre.
Yeah, I think your lesson, or your point about sacrifice is a really sage one, because my personal, like, when I listen to music, and I try to impart this to my daughter, she's still learning, but I go back and I listen to old jazz records, and I say, listen, of course you've heard these names before, but you got to take yourself back to when these guys were just grinding it out in a club, and they were dirt poor, and they were making the ultimate sacrifice. They didn't get a 9-to-5 job. They threw everything away to dedicate their life to making this music. And guess what? The world's a way better place because of it. One of my favorite, like, totally off topic, one of my favorite bands is Black Sabbath, and early Black Sabbath. And
I saw them
talking to envious, and just learning about what these guys did to sacrifice the comforts, the creature comforts, to make music. I mean, Tommy Iommi lost a finger, and eventually, as a result, created an entire different style of music because of it. Because they were that dedicated to music. And that, to me, comes out in the music. And that's part of the enjoyment of me consuming and listening to music, is that I'm considering it's that awesome. It's that revolutionary. And these guys did it like dirt poor, and not in the comfort of, a 5-star hotel.
Since you're telling rock stories, there's a documentary about Grand Funk Railroad. Do you know the story when they went in to play at Madison Square Garden?
I'd
Which
love
they
to hear
sold
that.
out. They sold out in like 4 hours or something, like this amazing thing. And they went into play, and one of them looked out at the stadium and said to the other one, "And we're making $350 a week." They're But it was the music.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, and that is a great band.
That is a
But I
fantastic.
know I admire Joe Locke, because I have stories about him in New York with a gas generator for the bass player, and they're out playing on the street to get their rent money, and they're playing
Yeah.
all day. Which, as a side note, they're practicing all day.
Mhm.
And that's why he's so incredible. And I just love seeing musicians who have just paid their fucking dues.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't believe what they went through to be where they are. And when it's like a really super great musician, and it's Sonny Rollins, or all the just
Yeah.
it just gives me chills.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close to the end
Oh,
of our
wow.
time here. Yeah, it's we're chucking along. I feel
Time
like
flies when you're
I
having
know.
fun.
So it's customary for us to end with just some little interesting factoid tidbit. Something we've done some deep dives in music. Your past with regards to being a student. Interesting thing that anybody would not know about you, that you could share, that Maybe you like to make sourdough bread. Maybe you're a basket weaver. Guilty pleasures, your favorite, hairband. Give us something interesting, Andrea.
Oh no. Well, I mean, I don't weave baskets. I oh shoot. I really love bulldogs, but everybody knows that, I think, because my bulldog is way more famous than Oliver. I like the banjo, bluegrass music, and music with banjo a lot. So I'm an amateur. I'm not good, but I kind of picked that up in a bluegrass
Oh,
band
wow.
when I was at Eastman. The community school next door had a bluegrass band, and it kind of kept me sane as I finished. I had no idea what I was doing, and as a former string player, it kind of like
Oh,
it
that's great.
strummed my heartstrings in a
Hmm.
way that is so unique.
Do you have a favorite
So
banjo player?
I like Bella Fleck a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah, I saw him and his wife. They kind of have a touring duo, Abigail Washburn.
Uh-huh.
Actually, my first year in Jacksonville, they played up in Amelia Island, and she's totally. So he plays Scruggs style, which is with the picks, and it's like basically permutations.
Yeah.
So I think you either love banjo and harpsichord, or you
Yeah.
hate it,
Yeah.
right? Like that kind of sound. I love it, and I think it works like to a percussionist's ear because it's percussive, but it's
Hmm.
also
Yeah.
chordal and beautiful. But she plays clawhammer, which is more of a strumming style, and you kind of,
Hmm.
you know. So it was like I think one of the most impactful concerts performances I've ever seen. Like, I mean, I was like in tears in the audience with a bunch of like, old guys watching. She was totally the star of the show. He just kind of accompanies her, but she sings and plays. That was really, really hip. So they have a few albums out. So I highly suggest that. It's like folk music, but
Hmm.
What's her name?
Abigail Washburn. I think one of their albums is Banjo Banjo. I think I don't know. There's several out now.
Which one should you listen to first?
I don't know because I bought an EP there, and then I think there's overlap between a couple of the albums with some of the same tunes, and I can't remember
All right,
which one is which.
I'll
But
check out Banjo Banjo.
but yeah, they're really hip. So I found I really like that sound, and I like the instrument a lot. You know, and so other than that, I mean, I used to brew beer. I haven't done that in a while, but I really like beer.
Nice. Okay. All right, Tony.
Um, I guess I love computers, so will study programming languages and do stuff. So once COVID hit, because I used to build my own websites to do the PHP to MySQL, which incidentally I'm an amateur programmer because I came down one day and opened up my site, which was full of porn one time. And the other time I came down and somebody hacked in and put the Turkish flag on my site.
Jesus.
So I know I'm not great at it, but I've been taking courses all through COVID just to work on languages and learning Google Apps Script and JavaScript and all that stuff. And I love doing it, and I would like to build my own website again. So I guess these days that's the weirdest thing I'm doing.
Well, that's good. That's good.
That's very good.
Weirdest thing I'm doing, I'll go to. I love
Yeah.
cooking projects. I've made my own vinegar. I have a really nice like
Oh,
raisin
Oh
vinegar that I
wow.
use to make vinaigrettes with. I usually always have garlic confit on hand, which is like garlic slow cooked in oil. I'm huge into barbecuing, and it just if it takes a long time, I love doing it. I just love the alchemy behind cooking. Hate baking, but yeah, if you guys are in town, we'll have a little
you're cooking.
backyard barbecue, and I will gladly cook for you guys.
Okay, so wait, why do you hate baking but like cooking? Like what am I missing here?
Baking is more of an exact science. Cooking is really more spontaneous. So I guess if there was a side
You
of
do
me
it
that
by
does like
feel.
to, yeah, if there's a side of me that does like to improvise, it's in the kitchen. Baking is like exact weight, exact measurements, and honestly, I like the product better. I like barbecue better than sweet. I'm not much of a sweets person.
Do you wear an apron?
No, but I'm being convinced because I just bought this thing called a Blackstone. You know what that is?
Uh-uh.
It's like a big outdoor flat top griddle. You could do like hibachi style stuff on it or smash burgers, and and just grease goes everywhere. And my buddy goes, you need to get an apron.
Yeah.
Other than that, no, I don't really wear an apron. I try not to be messy because I'm also kind of a neat freak with my kitchen. Like it's literally set up like a restaurant. You know, like my pots and pans are hanging here because it's all about like I run a cooking Facebook group called The Food Things I Do, and somebody was asking like, you know, gosh, I wish I cooked as much as you, and I said, well, make it easy. You know, like don't have to dig 5 minutes to find that spatula, and I guarantee you'll be cooking more.
Yeah.
You know, so. On that note, open invitation for you guys. You know, we'll see what kind of weather PASIC brings us. It might not be an outdoor barbecue, but what the heck? Maybe we'll make a nice warm soup or something.
Sometimes it's warm enough to survive outside. Some years it's not too brutal,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, I mean, we did have snow accumulation on April 20th here in Indiana. So, you know, you never know what any month is going to bring you.
Wow.
So, well, on that note, guys, thank you very much. This is really enjoyable. I think words per minute, we probably logged the most amount of conversation in an hour so far. So this was really great.
Virtual high five.
Totally virtual high five. So thank you guys both. I'm going to sign us off here. And thanks for everybody that joined us. We'll see you next time.